All right, this is chapter 3, day 2. We are doing 3 lessons today. So we're going to be talking about parallel and perpendicular lines first. So when we have lines that are parallel, those lines they never touch. They kind of sit on top of each other. And then I have 2 pictures here to show you. However, when it comes to the slope, which is what we're focused on, parallel lines have the same slope. So for example, if my slope is, let's say, 2, if the lines are parallel, my slope would also be 2. So your slope will stay exactly the same. Okay, if you have lines that are perpendicular lines, they intersect, they cross, and where they cross, they form 90-degree angles. So you see how you have these little boxes, so you have 90 degrees. So that means that your slopes are opposite, reciprocal slopes. And so what that means is, what I like to say is you flip them and you switch them. Okay, so let's say, for example, your slope is 1/3. Okay, opposite means it goes from a positive to a negative. Reciprocal means that you literally switch the top and the bottom. So when I flip them, I get 3/1. Okay, the opposite of a positive is a negative. So this becomes negative 3/1. And so if they're perpendicular, you flip and you switch. And if they're parallel, they're the same. Okay, so we're going to keep that logic going as we do the problems. All right, so for the first example, we have to write an equation of a line that's parallel to this line. Okay, you want to identify your slope. Your slope is the number in front of the x. So my slope here is 2. Because it's parallel, it means it's going to be the same. So because it's the same, my slope will stay as 2. Okay, so that's already done. This -4 is actually not useful in any way. It's just there to give you the original line. However, this 0.25 we are going to use. This is my x and this is my y. So I'm going to write that down. So for x, I have 2. For y, I have 5. What I'm solving for here is my y-intercept, which is my b. Okay, that I don't know. I'm going to plug the values that I do know into my y equals mx plus b equation. So these numbers that I have, I'll put in the correct spot. So instead of y, I'll plug in a 5. Instead of m, I'll plug in a 2. Instead of x, I'll plug in a 2. And then I have plus b. So I'm solving for b. I'm trying to get b by itself. So I get 5 equals 4 plus b. And then my last step is to get b alone. So I'll subtract the 4 from both sides. So I get 1 is equal to b. Okay, however, it does say write an equation like y equals mx plus b. So I want to use the new slope that I got, but because it's parallel, they're the same. And I want to use the y-intercept that I got. So my equation here is y equals 2x plus 1. So we've done this process before, however, the only new concept is the parallel and perpendicular one. So what I would like you to do is I would like you to pause the video right here so that you could try it by yourself. It's parallel, so it's the same type of process. And then you'll unpause the video so that you can check your answers. All right, so here's what I got for that bottom one. So because your slope is 1/3, it'll stay as 1/3. I'm not going to change it. Okay, that -2 means nothing to us, so ignore it. But you are going to use this 3 and this 2, and that's why I wrote that here on the side. And then I'm solving for my b. In the end, you get 1 as your b, and when you plug stuff back in, this should have been your equation. All right, let's flip to the next page. All right, if it's perpendicular, you have to flip and you have to switch, right? So it's opposite reciprocals. So first, identify what your slope is. So my slope is this 1/2, right? It's the number in front of the x. So I'm going to write m equals 1/2. Okay, then from here, I am going to make my changes as needed. So I have to flip these. So then that becomes 2/1. Okay, if this is positive, this becomes negative. So this becomes negative 2 over 1. We can simplify this more, and we can write here, I'll write it over here. If I simplify this more, I can leave it as negative 2. That's the slope that I want. That's my final slope. Okay, so it was this, but I flipped it and I switched it. Okay, so now that I have my new m, right, this is the m that I want. Okay, this minus 6 I can ignore. And then I want to use this x and this y. So my x here is 6, my y is 2, and my b is question mark. Okay, I'm going to plug those values into y equals mx plus b. So instead of y, I'm going to plug in 2. Instead of m, I'm going to plug in negative 2. Instead of x, I'm going to plug in 6, and then plus b. Okay, so I have 2 equals, that's negative 12 plus b. The opposite of a negative is a positive, so I'll add that to both sides. So, sorry, it's kind of small right here in space. So I get 14, I'll do it over here. 14 equals b. So remember, you want your b, which is what I solved for, and my new m, which is negative 2, right after I flip and switch. Then I'll write my equation as negative 2x plus 14. All right, so just like we did for the parallel one on the previous page, I want you to pause it so you could try this one on your own. And then you'll come back so that I can show you the correct answers. Okay, so this is what you should have gotten for the try it. So your slope is 5 over 2. When you flip it and you switch it, it becomes 2 over 5. Because it's positive, it becomes negative. And then I use this x and this y, and I plug it into my equation right here. And then for b, I get 4. And then ultimately, I create my equation with my new slope, which is this negative 2 over 5. Okay, perfect. Now we're going to move on to the problem at the bottom. So it says graph the segment that connects the points A and B. Okay, so let me graph them first. All right, A is negative 2, 8. This is A. And B is 6, negative 1. Okay, this is B. A segment is has 2 dots at its endpoints and the line that connects them. So there's my line segment. To calculate the slope, you can use the graph or you can use the equation. So for example, I'm going to use the equation because I think that's going to help me the best. Remember, that's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Then I'm going to label my points. The first point is the first. The second point is obviously the second one, so number 2. Then I'm going to put those numbers in their correct spot. So I have negative 1 minus 8, and I have 6 minus negative 2. So I'm going to put that in my calculator. So negative 1 minus 8, okay? So the top is negative 9, then I have 6 minus negative 2, so I have positive 8 on the bottom. Okay, so I have negative 9 over positive 8. You could also make your slope triangle here to get the same answer, but I just wanted to do the equation. Okay, writing the equation, we're actually going to skip this part, so you can put an extra here. We're skipping this because we're only focused on the slope. We already practiced writing the equation, so we just want to focus on the slope here. Okay, so if I know my slope is negative 9 over 8, if I want the slope that's parallel, remember parallel means the same. So that means if I keep it the same, this will be the same thing here. So negative 9 over 8. Remember, for perpendicular, I have to flip and I have to switch it. So if my slope at the moment is negative 9 over 8, right, because that's the original one, if I flip my numbers, I get 8 over 9. And because my slope at the moment is negative, my new slope will become positive. So this is my final slope. This is my perpendicular slope. So just keep in mind, parallel is the same, and perpendicular is you flip and you switch them. All right, let's move on to the next page. We're going to talk about area models. All right, so this is a little bit different than the parallel and perpendicular slopes. So for area models, we're going to draw a box. And so in order to do an area model, we draw boxes. So for this first problem, think about how many things you have in your parentheses. So here I have 2, and here I have 2. So this is going to be a 2 by 2 box, so a square. So I'm going to draw my 2 by 2 box. One of your expressions will go on the top, and one of them can go on the side. It doesn't matter where you put them. So the first one I'll put on the side. Keep the plus or minus with the second term. You see how I move that minus with the 5? And then I'll keep the other one up here, so x plus 6. So you see how I kept the plus with the 6? Then I want to multiply to get the numbers inside the box. So here, x times 2x is 2x squared. Okay, x times negative 5 is negative 5x. 6 times 2x is 12x. And 6 times negative 5 is negative 30. So you're always multiplying to get inside of the box. However, then to get outside of the box, you want to combine any like terms that you have. So like terms meaning they have the same amount of variables or the same amount of x's. So both of these only have that one x. So because of that, I can combine them, right? I want to add them. So you're always adding your like terms. Okay, so in my answer, because your answer has to go outside of the box, I'm going to have that 2x squared, 12x plus negative 5x, that gives me positive 7x, and then I still have that minus or that negative 30. So this at the bottom, this product, all of this is my answer. So just keep in mind your answer has to be written outside of the box. Okay, let's try letter B. So for letter B, I have 2 things here, and I have 2 things here. So this is a 2 by 2 box. So I'm going to draw my box. One of them will go on the side, and then one of them will go on top. So here I have 3x minus 1, and then here I have 3x plus 1. So in order to get my stuff in the box, I'm going to multiply. So 3x times 3x, I get 9x squared. 3x times negative 1, I get negative 3x. 1 times 3x, that's 3x. And 1 times negative 1 is negative 1. Whatever you have as like terms, you want to combine them. So like these I can combine, and you're always adding your like terms. So here I'm doing 3x plus negative 3x, which you'll notice will cancel each other out. They zero each other out. It's 0. So then the stuff that I'm left with is that 9x squared and the minus 1. So whatever you have left, you just write outside of your box. So the 9x squared and the negative 1. All right, let me try letter C. Letter C is interesting because you only have it once. So like you have this 5x minus 3, but you see that little 2? It means that I technically have 2 of them. This is the same thing as this. So I have 2 of the same thing. So if you see something like that, always rewrite it out so that you know you have 2 of them. Okay, because then from here, I could draw my box. So I'll do my box over here. So I just have the same thing twice, so it doesn't matter where it goes. I have a 5x minus 3, and then I have a 5x minus 3. And then I'll multiply to get my stuff inside of the box. So 5x times 5x is 25x squared. Negative 3 times 5x is negative 15x. 5x times negative 3 is negative 15x. And negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. Think about what your like terms are. Okay, and you're going to add them. Be careful here. The common mistake is that students think those cancel each other out, but they actually don't. Negative 15 plus negative 15 does give you an answer. So I'm left with this 25x squared. Negative 15x plus negative 15x is actually negative 30x. And then I have this 9, which is positive, so I'm going to write plus 9. So this is my final answer at the bottom. So those can be kind of tricky. Let's try letter D. All right, letter D, you'll notice, is a 2 by 3 box, meaning there are 2 things in the first and 3 things in the second. So this is a rectangle. You have a 2 by 3 box. So I'm going to put the first one on the side, and I'll put the second one on the top. So like here, I'm going to write 2x minus 4. And here I'm going to write x minus y plus 5. All right, I'm going to multiply each box. So 2x times x is 2x squared. 2x times negative y is negative 2xy. 5 times 2x is 10x. X times negative 4, negative 4x. Negative y times negative 4 is positive 4y. And then 5 times negative 4 is negative 20. Okay, I have a lot of stuff, but you still want to identify any like terms. So for me, that's the 10x and the negative 4x, and I'm still adding. Okay, so I'm left with this 2x squared, this minus 2xy, 10x plus negative 4x is 6x. I have this positive 4y, and then I have this negative 20. Sorry, I'm like running out of space. All of this, all of that is your answer. So obviously you want to write it outside of the box. Okay, there are 2 try-its that I would like you to try, so A and B. So go ahead and pause the video here. Once you feel like you have those, go ahead and unpause so that I can show you the correct answers for these 2 try-its for A and B. Okay, so hopefully you tried it by yourself, and you should have gotten x squared plus 7x plus 12 for the first one. And then you'll notice that your like terms here cross off, so you're left with x squared minus 49. Okay, perfect. So there are only 3 types of problems left that we have to do today, and so it does require the box, but it also requires some solving. So if I look at the first example, you'll notice that on the left I have this x plus 6 and x minus 2, and then on the right I already have things multiplied out. So what I want to do here is for the left, I want to do the box. Okay, so I'm going to do the box on the side over here. I'm going to put this x plus 6 on the side, and then I'm going to write this x minus 2 up here. Okay, so I have x times x, which is x squared. I have negative 2 times x, which is negative 2x. X times 6, which is 6x. And negative 2 times 6, which is negative 12. I still want to identify my like terms. My like terms are this negative 2x and this 6x, and I'm adding them. I'm going to write my answer over here on the left because I want to put it underneath this. So that means I have x squared. When I add my like terms together, I get 4x. I still have that minus 12. And then I want to write this just the same way. I didn't change it or do anything to it, so I'm just going to rewrite it. Okay, whenever you're doing these types of problems where you're solving and you have to do the box, you'll notice that your squared terms, so you see how I have x squared on both sides, that will always cancel out. That will always happen in these types of problems. So then whatever I have left over, I'm going to write underneath. You see how I have no x squared terms, and so now I just have x's, and I've done this type of problem before. So I'm just going to solve for x. I'm going to add the 2x to both sides. I get 6x minus 12 equals 18. The opposite of a negative is a positive, so I'm going to add 12 to both sides. So I get 6x equals 30, and then I'm going to divide by 6. So 30 divided by 6, in the end, I get x equals 5. So for these problems that are a little bit more involved, you will have to do the box first, but then ultimately you're able to solve for x like normal. Okay, let's try B. So same thing. So for the left, the only thing I can reduce or simplify is this like negative 10 plus 3. So like that's x squared minus 7. But then for the right side, I am going to have to do the box. So I will do the box over here on the side. I'll put the x plus 3 on the side, and I'll put the x minus 2 at the top. All right, so I have x times x, which is x squared, negative 2 times x, which is negative 2x, x times 3, which is 3x, and negative 2 times 3, which is negative 6. I'm going to combine my like terms, and then I'll write my answer outside of the box, but I'll write it right here on the right side. So here I have x squared, negative 2x plus 3x is just positive x, and then I have the minus 6. You'll notice that your squared terms, like my x squared terms, will always cancel, so these cancel each other out. So I'm left with negative 7 equals x plus 6. And then because I want my x by itself, I'm going to subtract the 6 from both sides. Or this is minus 6. Sorry, I changed it to plus by accident. Here, let me change that. So this should stay as minus 6. Sorry. Then I'll add the 6 to both sides. These cancel. And so I'm left with negative 1 equals x. All right, once you have that, let's turn to the last page, and there's one problem on the back side that we're going to do today. All right, so for this try it, I would like you to pause the video and try it by yourself, and then once you feel like you have it, go ahead and unpause so that we can talk about the answer together. And so once you do that problem by yourself, you are required to do the box. You should get negative 3. Okay, so here's my box, right? I multiplied everything out. I combine my like terms. These are my like terms. Okay, I get negative 7. My squared terms will cancel out. And then from there, I just solve for x like normal, and I get negative 3. And that's where we're going to stop today, and then we'll pick up day 3 tomorrow.